get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my roll chop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day prepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclosed Vic homes at the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to UCY.TV. Tonight, Voice of Rebellion with Chris J. and the revolutionary history of May Day. I'm Vince Easley. I'm here at the switchboard. I'll be adding your calls if you'd like to join the conversation in just a few at 718-717. Stand by, Chris. 718-717-8296. And tomorrow is 3 years for me here at UCY.TV. If you're listening downstream, come on back over here to UCY.TV/news. Join the chat, and I'm going to be re-airing my first broadcast, and I'm going to have a little bit of some appreciation to share with the listeners. So, hey, we will see you in chat, and remember, come on in and join the call here in just a little bit. Hey, Chris, good evening.
Hey, everybody. This is, it's now 9 o'clock Eastern time, and nowadays it doesn't even really seem that late. The show used to seem so much later when we're doing it in fall and winter. Really, when you get to the dead of winter, and it seems like it's on the middle of the night practically by the time we get to the show. But now it's practically just got dark. And everybody, yes, this is Chris J here, the one and I'd say only co-host, but we still kind of have, CP Libre, I say, is indefinitely not part of the show at this point, but he's welcome to come back whenever his obligations are no longer need to be dealt with outside the radio show. By the way, we're just looking for any callers. You can call in as long as you're respectful. When we have a show with only one host, the callers, I guess, make the show a little bit better, considering that the fact that it's a little bit better than me doing a 2-hour solo, just spitting the words at you for all the way up to 11 o'clock. So anybody that's willing to get part of the show, please do. And I want to start off with putting out what is May Day, because May Day is not a holiday celebrated in the United States too much. It used to be celebrated a little bit more back in the 60s and 70s, and then it kind of fell off. It never was a national holiday. And the funny thing is, we do have a national holiday that has the same concept of May Day, but we have it in September. It's Labor Day. May Day is Labor Day in other parts of the world, but here in the United States, we never adopted May 1st as our Labor Day, which I always found a little bit interesting. And Labor Day wasn't even a holiday altogether around the world. May Day was the first one until 1889. Second International decided to designate this day as May Day. Why May Day got the name? People speculate for different reasons, but it's believed to be because of May 4th, 1886. There was a huge tragedy I believe in the United States, there was a big labor protest, and the police showed up and detonated a bomb, killing some of the workers that were protesting on May 4th, 1886. So a few years later, Second International decided to put May 1st from now on out will be Labor Day. And May Day lost some of its, it gained a different meaning somewhat. It was a Cold War. Became known to many, some Americans, as the day, especially in the 50s, they would see on television in black and white the Soviets perhaps parading their missiles down the Red Square in other communist countries, and used to kind of show as display military power. And it's funny, even though that Russia is no longer a communist, they still May Day is still one of the most important holidays in Russia. I think it's because it's somewhat of a prelude to probably Russia's most important holiday nowadays, which is Victory Day, May 9th, celebrating the victory over Nazi Germany and the fascist Europe when they officially were defeated on May 9th. Was when the official surrender happened of Nazi Germany, ending the European theater of war. May 1st is the day, I believe, this is also another anniversary. Hitler died, at least officially, on May 1st, 1945. However, of course, now we're starting to see a lot of speculation and a lot of evidence going to make a different story might have happened when it came to the fate of Adolf Hitler. Many people believe that he probably lived after 1945. And that what happened in the bunker was either A, made up, or B, staged, and that Hitler really got away and went to Argentina or some other country far away. There's proof. The evidence seems to be there, and there's a lot, and it seems like it's also became mainstream now. There's even a TV show about it. So, and oddly enough, 66 years later, is the day Bin Laden, which we know that almost for a fact in the truther community, that Bin Laden didn't die on May 1st, 2011. He probably died well before May 1st, 2011. There's two different dates. From the stories I see, there's a convincing argument for both. 2001 and 2006 both have dates where Bin Laden probably died in one of those two. And Bin Laden, they even had on Fox News, they said that he had died of natural causes in 2001, December 2001 was reported, but then it was taken off. And then in 2006, when a CIA agent claimed that he was working with Bin Laden, and that's when he died of natural causes. And I believe that that's probably most likely what happened, that he died of natural causes, because he was and even in 2001, he's in poorly bad health. He was in pretty poor health. He was poorly health, kind of. He kind of limited him because what he had a kidney failure, I believe. So is what they said, and he was on dialysis. So it's kind of hard to believe that he was living his life on the fringe, on the outskirts for that long. While he had that, so it's probably more likely that he only made it a few years after. And Bin Laden, of course, was a United States asset for in the 80s, confirmed, and all the way up into 90s, 2000s. I mean, there was Zbigniew Brzezinski, or whatever, the major foreign policy mastermind of the United States, actually met with Bin Laden in the 80s. So that's not confirmed, I should say, because the United States government never has admitted to it, but it's more evidence that he was definitely working in the 80s and made in later years. But I still think I think it's about the same evidence. It looks like Bin Laden was working with the United States all the way up to his death, and Bin Laden would become the patsy of the 9/11 attacks, which we now know was an inside job, Mossad job. It's funny that the United States is now going to pick a different culprit as the truth is starting to leak out, unless people are believing. A lot of people believe now that Bush had a major role in 9/11. I mean, it became kind of like a joke on the internet. They'll have like a picture and say, things that your girlfriend should always hear. She's beautiful. You care about her. Bush did 9/11. You know, like the picture. I mean, it became almost like an internet trend. So at this point, I think that the new damage control, they're going to put what people are going to believe is the all-out truth of 9/11, even though it's only going to be a small piece, and it's definitely progress. But I'm worried about what's going to be the result. Are people going to take this as the final? There's no more investigating that needs to be done, which looks like what they're going to do is going to pin it mostly on the Saudis. Also, I think people are realizing the absolute hypocrisy of the United States supporting Saudis while calling Assad a dictator, and also the all-out hypocrisy all-out just horrible nature that the Saudi government has done to its citizens and killing top Shia leaders and much other stuff. May Day there's a lot of I think there's a lot of people don't really understand exactly what May Day is, and to be clear is that I'm not exactly sure if I think there's a possibility that the origins might be not exactly. I mean, I think that maybe, because it was pushed, for example, by Leon Trotsky and stuff like that, which we know did some horrible stuff in the Bolshevik Revolution. I don't support some of the people that really pushed it at the beginning, but what it became for the world and now what it is today in Russia and other countries and what inspired people in Cuba and Venezuela, it's a little bit different. It's kind of changed into. I mean, it's like. I'm trying to think of another holiday, for example, that has kind of a similar root. That maybe the roots weren't exactly the best, but it turned into something much different. I would say maybe perhaps one that from something good to bad is think about our own Independence Day. There used to be a celebration of our, rebellious nature rebelling against the British on July 4th, 1776, and then it turned into just becoming patriotic bootlickers, and everybody becomes, ultra patriotic bootlickers for one day on July 4th. In some ways, I would say, I would say my Christmas is to that extent. I guess is somewhat a holiday but that's one with really bad roots. I mean, with the Saturnalia and all that, what that represented. But then nowadays, not in America, but in other countries, I would say, it has a really, a family getting together and, people just showing altruism, I guess. Here in the United States, it's actually still a bad thing because it's just completely about consumerism. And if your kid doesn't have the better thing than your neighbor's kid, you're a shitty parent. That's just a horrible thing. They say you're not only because now they're going to ask why is Santa not giving me this really nice thing, but he's giving my neighbor that because they have the Santa thing. The pressure, that's how it works. It pressures parents into having to keep up with the Joneses. And you have two options: you can either burst your kid's bubble about that, or you can just look, or you can really just really break your kid's heart. So it's really shitty what they do in America with this, with all the money that people spend on the holiday. I think in other countries it's not like that. I know that's not like that. For example, Colombia, in the Latin American world, it's not really about the gifts you get. It's about the family get together and the all out just altruistic values people show on that day. But May Day, it should be now. It's the day of the poor. Of the world rising up against the oligarchy and back in the day, and that we've had some victories reached the last 150 years or so when it comes to what kind of working conditions used to exist. I mean, mainly when you think about the children, they used to have to, because when we had children labor in the Western world, that they go through some absolute horrors. And when you think about it, is that we've kind of reversed in the last 50 years or so some of those gains that we had. Because think about it. For example, off the clock work. We fought so hard, the working class, for an 8-hour workday, and then we kind of reversed it by all these loopholes and stuff like that, where if you're any bit of a professional job, they expect you to do 4 hours off the clock work, so you're doing 12-hour days, which is like what existed prior to the 8-hour victory. And also the fact that now people say, well, I make $16 an hour, but if you're working 12 hours and 4 off the clock and only 8 are paid, what you're really making was dropped to like $12. You're not making much more than the person you just criticized for being not going to college or whatever. And at least they punch in and punch out at the start of the 8 hours and the end of the 8 hours, and they're done. It kind of discourages kids that set up in America for intellectual work to be done. But it's all a trick, isn't it? I mean, they make it seem like it's going to be a breeze, and then when it's actually going to happen, when you get there, you're going to be working your entire lives away. I mean, for example, teachers and stuff like that, it doesn't have to be that way. But they set it up that way. So when they get there, they're working 14 hours a day and stuff like that, and they only get paid like $10 an hour. They're working for practically under minimum wage. We wonder why it's set up for education to be shitty. Because how much original thought and actual effort are teachers going to put in when they have to put all these hours, they exhaust themselves, and then they get there, they see a bunch of disrespectful, very ungrateful young generation there that don't care when they actually put the little effort extra. And May Day, it was actually a pretty big holiday, from what I understand, the Midwest, especially back in like the 70s. My dad talks about that back in Ohio, that he didn't really know what it was about until recently. But he just thought it was some kind of cool thing that they did. And yeah, it kind of lost some of its labor meaning. The transferred holiday to the United States, I think, was more of a lot of the working class revolutionary ideals that were in the movements around the world when they got transferred to the United States in the 60s and 70s kind of got turned into more like hippie just a hippie and cool thing in the United States, and kind of lost some of its original meaning. For example, or even the punk movement in the United States. The punk movement in Britain was a really hardcore anti-monarchy, anti-establishment thing, and then the United States, it kind of just turned into what the edgy outsider kids did, and what also even unfortunately, it's kind of, I think in the United States it picked up some like skinhead elements, and you see some of that kind of like some of the punk movement gained that. I don't think it started off that way in Britain. I think it gained some of that, and that's why you see sometimes the interchanging of the two movements or whatever. Unfortunately, they got deviated, and it seems to be sometimes, a lot of times, what happens in the United States when a movement comes here is that it becomes deviated into something different and something less profound. And May Day eventually just dropped off by the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't, when we, especially, of course, we couldn't share any holidays under the Ronald Reagan era of we really had to show that we were different from the Russians, which, in the long run, the Russians and the United States, they ultimately had a lot of similarities in the end. And the Russians, I don't know if that was mismanagement that caused it to end up like that, or was it intentionally by design. Definitely, it seemed like that was the look at some of the roots of going back to how the Soviet Union formed, was the Bolshevik Revolution. And then only what seemed to be the biggest real resistance in the world during the Cold War times may come from Yugoslavia. In the Arab world was Nasser and Gaddafi, and those leaders coming up. But it was Tito died, that connection between all these, whether the non-aligned movement, which I talked about, these countries that weren't on the Western or Eastern side of the Cold War, they were just doing their own thing and being sovereign. That was one of their main ideals that they stressed. Kind of that connection between between those European and Middle Eastern countries kind of fell apart when Tito died. And kind of after that, Yugoslavia didn't have a solid leader, because it went into like a 1 year, one leader, 1 year, another leader, 1 year, another leader, and back and forth. There wasn't like a solid successor to Tito when he died. May but this year, Mayday actually has had some pretty surprising results. Like I've seen in New York, it was a pretty big rally, and I do question some of the people on that side of the movement, especially because I see that, believe it or not, in the United States, these Stalinists kind of like infiltrate into the activist community. They don't really belong in the activist community. They don't really share a lot of our ideals, but they, excuse me for a second, but they still are in the activist community, just talk online. I think it's on some of them. They think it's a cool thing to do, or they just been misled by some of the other people, maybe some YouTubers or whatever. I ran into one of them. Actually, it was the Bundy. It was the whole Bundy thing. And the whole Bureau of Land Management thing that was going on.
Hey, Chris, you need me to?
Yeah.
You need me to step in for a minute? You need something to do there, or you got something going on?
Well, I was just somebody was supposed to be coming in at the door right now. I then went to the door, nobody was there, so that's cool. But yeah, yeah, okay, now that should be solved right now. Anyways, yeah, sorry about that for about the 2-minute disruption there.
Dave's not there, man. Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, I got a voice message, and then go to the door, no one's there when there's supposed to be someone there. It was kind of weird. Come inside. And let me digress and go back to what I was talking about with the Mayday and modern day, is that it seems like it's picked up some steam in the activist community. I think some people are in it for good and some people are in it for different reasons. I think that seeing some of the inspiration that came out of the recent developments, it seems like every time down in South America and stuff like that, huge demonstrations against what the United States agenda has been in South America. Like what we've seen, look what's happened in Brazil right now. And and you see media coverage. You don't see any media coverage at all about the whole situation on our mainstream media, because right now they can't stop talking about. Well, right now the big thing is the state dinner last night. But there's always something that they're not talking about the Brazil now, that there's practically a coup going on where a lot of the people are against the removal of Dilma Rousseff from power, and the Spanish TV here in the United States is showing that every time there's a protest or whatever, they might even do interviews with some of the opposition members, but then they want to show the millions in support of Dilma and Lula, which I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's why the U.S. has pursued regime change so heavily in Brazil right now, was the bringing back of Lula da Silva, because Lula was actually more hardcore than Dilma. Dilma was more moderating the country, but still Dilma had signed into the BRICS agreement to join with Russia to make a bank that would be against the World Bank and the IMF. So I think that's the true reason that Dilma and Lula are now being targeted, is the banking aspect of it in Brazil. Also that they have a lot of power, because at any moment they could cut off the United States all the oil that they have in their country. And also Brazilian people don't really use the oil, because they went to ethanol, most of them, so they just have a ton of oil to sell to the rest of the world, leaving a giant stockpile. It's not like Venezuela that are still using oil, but they still have a ton of oil to sell. Brazil has just oil to sell to the rest of the world, and they really, by them selling on this side, on the other side of the block, when it comes to this economic warfare, gasoline warfare, they're selling cheaper and cheaper, trying to bankrupt each other out. It really, the Saudis started it. Brazil can hold up Venezuela, but without Brazil, Venezuela might also go with it into total bankruptcy. And they're still struggling. They're having all kinds of restrictions and stuff like that, putting on certain stuff when it comes to different changes, and they're really trying to adjust and do it. Maduro's trying all these changes. It almost looks like it almost looks like a baseball manager after when he comes up with a weird lineup coming up on the other side, and he's doing a bunch of defensive switches. He's moving the first baseman way over to the left and stuff like that, and bring the second baseman way near third base and stuff like that, and doing very unusual stuff. And he just seems to be kind of frantically. But the weird thing is, though, he's holding on, and it's kind of like that. And, it's like we have two that started off with 2 runners on, no outs, and now he might have gotten his first out, and he's about to get the second out. That's how far I think we're about the situation. Is the raw spot that he ran into in 2016. And it's funny. It's right after he gained a lot of support when people realized who in Venezuela who was the opposition. They saw him actually get the power and how disgusting they act immediately once they got the power in December of 2015. People were like, hell no, we'll take Maduro and his guys any day over these guys. And I think he gained a little bit of support. And then the sanctions rate in Venezuela has reaffirmed some of the support. But it's very difficult right now in Venezuela. And what the United States is doing by sanctioning, making sure that all their European allies and making sure that really most countries besides, it's very hard for anyone outside South America to trade with Venezuela right now. And also what they're trying to do with Brazil right now, like making them crumble, would be right there would leave Venezuela in a very, very, very tough spot. But again, I think that's enough defense switches, using the baseball analogy right there, and could actually get them out of the jam and on to the next inning, which I think the next inning after this, once this country stabilizes somewhat, is starting to look towards 2018 and eventually may at least bring into the public spotlight somebody that would run in the place of Maduro in 2018, because he doesn't look like he could win in a general election in Venezuela. And I would say that a better chance would be, there's quite a few candidates that would have a better chance than Maduro. And I don't think Maduro's like an acting president that came to place for Chavez. That really just feels like still. It feels like it was never gotten out in an acting president stage, or not far from it. They need a new leader. They need somebody really. Chavez's shoes have never been filled, because again, it's like taking out the 55-year-old manager that's been managing for 20 years. In his case, will be managing for 14 years, and then bringing in somebody that had just been a bench coach for just a few months. He only had been vice president for a few months, but since he was well known, the party put him in to the run instead of anybody else. But a lot of people argued that it should have been Diosdados Caballos, and now there's even a rumor going on that maybe one of Chavez's daughters will run, which that'd be interesting, because right now it'd be a flip side compared to the bad that we see in Peru, was a possibility of a daughter of a fascist dictator, Keiko Fujimori, possibly taking power. And Jeff said that those names don't sound very Latin. It's not. These people, I'm pretty sure, practically Japanese, but yet they're in the Peruvian government. Fujimori did all kinds of war crimes, all the way up to about 2000. And yet, just 16 years later, his legacy is quite a bit different, where his daughter can run and use that she's the daughter of the former president, not the former murderous dictator, and she could win, even though she hasn't won officially. The flip side is just a classic American businessman, and a classic, and also a Zionist, Kuczynski, who, if he wins, is just as bad as Keiko Fujimori winning for the Peruvian future. And what we've seen with all this gloom and doom on the horizon, or what could be perceived that way, is that we've seen a lot of people rising up, a lot of people, a lot of people say no to it. I mean, they're just in their voices are being heard, and letting them know that they're not going to go down without a fight, and that even if, for example, in some fraudulent way Maduro is overthrown in some, corrupt parliament vote or something like that, is that the people will not let it happen. It'll be like the coup in 2002, is that they'll have 1 million waiting at the doors ready to storm the palace if the right-wing leaders had been taken out in April 2002. It's hard to believe it's 14 years since that happened. It was one of the most defining moments showing the power of the people in Venezuela. And it wasn't like 1989 where they had been demoralized via the Carazaco, and 3,000 of those of people were killed. Some of the estimates go up to during the Carazaco. Nowadays, I don't see that would let it happen. People are armed too, a lot more than they were during the time of Andres Perez and some of these dictators that had ruled over South America in the 70s and 80s. And I was talking to a Brazilian yesterday, and there seems to be this disconnect between the history of South America prior to 1995 and the South Americans that live here in the United States. They don't know anything about it. They think that it was much better for these leaders coming to power. But I told her, do you even know how bad Guaido was? And Guaido, was one of the worst dictators ever in South American history. What they all were a similar par of evil, Stroessner. And the truth, what really happened to the people was that anybody that stood up was killed. The rest were day slaves or had to work just 16 hours to survive or picking trash. All kinds of may resort to some kind of some extreme, some kind of day laboring or stuff like that for the entire day. And the walls and stuff like that you see in South American countries, I believe those came up during that time. How you see like walls between the poor and rich parts of the city came during that time. And the huge slums, for example, in Caracas, a very big eyesore, giant building that came down recently because it was no longer needed to be inhabited. But it was this horrible slum that used to house, thousands of some of the poorest Caracas residents. Now they've been moved into nicer houses and apartments and stuff like that, built by the oil dollars. And but now it seems to be a little bit hard for progress there when they are down to state workers only working 2 days a week right now. They've reached an energy crisis. The energy crisis is being brought about by the fact that they're having to sell a lot of oil just to keep up with the state budget. But the problem is it's a deficit because they're selling very low price. Saudis are losing money, but they have plenty of money to tap into, and this is the economic warfare. It's trying to make the country go bankrupt. Right? Just keep selling and keep selling, because they figure that they have more of what you have or have more money to tap into. I mean, the Saudi royal family has $1.3 trillion. They're one of the trillionaire families of this planet, the Al Saud family, and I mean, it's you put in perspective what kind of money that is, and it makes it makes your millionaire, the millionaire that lives in your city or whatever, look like he has peanuts. When you talk about $1 trillion, it's 1 million millions. Which, when you try to fathom that, just try to fathom what $1 million looks like, that's a few suitcases or so of hundreds, I know, probably a suitcase of hundreds, maybe two, and then you do, then you do just 100 of those, and it's a gigantic number, and then you're still not even close to what the number that, of $1 trillion, just imagine 2 suitcases, but then 1 million more, or a million times that. So 2 million of that, it doesn't actually exist really. It's all, but they practically own the money. Some of these people that are at the top that have this kind of money. So it's all a computer number. But practically what it means is that they have so much wealth that it's just almost completely impossible for them to spend all their money in a lifetime or even 100 lifetimes. It will be very hard because there's just not even there's enough to buy practically everything, and they're not far if it keeps going the way it is, from them controlling everything, if they control all central banks on the planet. With what they have right now, which is still somewhere between 10 and 25 short, that's right now, I would say, that would be, they have somewhere between, well, I mean, some people estimate $500, $700 trillion, which they talk about then you got 2 million suitcases, and you have to times that by 500 to 700. So it's already, that's how much money it would take, if you're actually going to put $100 physical bills. But remember, those $100 physical bills mean nothing, and they're definitely not using that as money. Like, that's not what they spend. They're using their credit, or they're using, because that's what that pretty much means. It does, your money in your wallet doesn't mean anything. It's actually not money by definition. It's currency. As it's a piece of paper, because the person that owns the currency tells you it's worthless, it's worthless. But it's not a precious metal, or that thing can't be redeemed for a precious metal. You can't take that to a bank and get silver and gold like the silver certificate used to be. That was actually money. But we don't have the silver standard anymore. And JFK was the last one to try to preserve the silver standard, and he was killed for it. And he was also not going to allow the Federal Reserve to dictate no more the printing of money in the United States. He's going to return it to the United States Treasury and to the American people, which hasn't been since 1913. It was shortly done for 6 months after the executive order on June 4th, 1963, 1110. A few months he started printing the silver certificates, and guess what happens is 2 days after he's assassinated. He's not even, 2 days after. He wasn't even, the weekend hadn't even ended yet. He was killed on Friday, and the weekend hadn't even ended yet, and they already canceled his project, LBJ, who had been sworn into power immediately after the assassination. I mean, on the plane. That's the thing. They didn't even wait a day or 2 or 3 days. I know they're supposed to swear him in almost immediately, but they didn't even wait for him to come back to the White House. They inaugurated him immediately on the plane with Jackie Kennedy still crying next to him, which really showed the shadiness of what was going on. And Lyndon Johnson's just kind of seemed to be a lack of emotions and disregard for what Jacqueline Kennedy was feeling or anything like that. Well, she's supposed to be JFK's wingman, his vice president. And he seems to not care that his wingman has just been killed, or that the person he's supposed to be a wingman for, that the wife of that man that was just killed is standing there crying next to him, and he's more worried about getting sworn into power because there was an agenda that had to be fulfilled, and he fulfilled it within 2 days, which was to end that program. And there was much other stuff. I think that was just the final straw. That was the most important thing that JFK had done, but it was the thing that got him killed. Anyone wants to call in? 718-717-8296, 718-717-8296. Mayday is a very complex. The history of it varies, I guess, because it's changed meaning a couple times, and I would, I'm not as big as a supporter of it as I used to be, because I don't really support for the whole Trotsky who pushed it like I used to, and but I do support what it's became today. I don't really support perhaps the origination, but I think what they were what was being supposedly commemorated was something definitely worse, because it was a major incident of labor protest and the crackdown that happened. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Battle of Blair Mountain that happened around the turn of the century. And there's a lot of major events that happened, and it was kind of solid. What was happening at the turn of the century was the country was becoming more powerful, but at the same time, the super rich were ready to solidify the power by the Federal Reserve. They probably were already had their eyes on that many years before even the Jekyll Island meeting in 1910, when they actually made the plan, and then they put it into effect in 1913. I'm sure the super rich of the country probably had their eyes on it. The Rothschilds probably had the eye on that central bank since probably 1820 something when that one second attempt at putting a privately owned central bank in America failed under Andrew Jackson, which is one major thing that Andrew Jackson was very good for. And I find it a little bit ironic that for so many years he's been put on the face of the $20 bill, and it's kept on there as what, that piece of paper is everything that he was against. And now he's about to be replaced. And that's the big deal, is that people are more worried about the replacing of a face on the dollar than they are worried about the replacing of a standard of the dollar. Going from the silver certificate to the fiat currency that exists today, no one cares. No one cares. And it's funny how you even bring up this concept, so people just look at you like you're crazy. For once, they don't even know what fiat currency is, and then everybody gives you that fluoridated stare. And it's really sad what kind of level the people of America stoop to when it comes to their intelligence right now. And I can see it. I mean, on Facebook, and I have to be very frank, is that on Facebook, I see the different levels of intelligence, and it really, for example, the political, how much these people know just seems to be from a few pictures on the internet, and they seem to all have the similar fuck Trump, but will support Hillary Clinton when they're really the same. And of course, all the fuel to burn people, not too many Ted Cruz people. There's of course the joke that circulated: Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer. I found pretty funny, but I think it's almost like worn out funniness after people put too much stuff about it. And just a lot of jokes about Trump or whatever. And in the end, isn't what Trump has done. Trump is just he's kind of exposed the idiocy of this entire campaign of this whole election cycle, and these elections in general. This guy doesn't know what he does; he still has his followers, and at the same time, he says some pretty smart comments every now and then about some foreign policy or whatever. But then he comes with something very ridiculously stupid about domestic policy.
Hey,
I think
Chris.
it's almost impossible.
Hey, Chris.
Whatever. Yeah.
Hey, it sound like you might have dropped your cigarette and you was under your desk or something there. I think we got your audio back now.
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't know. I think right there. If I hold it right there, the audio sounds good. Yeah. Well, going back to what I was saying is that with Trump, the whole thing's been done and has been so popular. What he's done is beyond me, and definitely shown that and then they have Palin even joining the circus and stuff like that. It's just been a complete circus. But of course, that's rigged for Hillary, and Hillary will probably be assured that in a few weeks at the Bilderberg Committee in Dresden. Just where people should pay attention to when it comes to this election is that's where really the decision's made. The election doesn't have anything to do with it. Presidents are not elected; they are selected. And even FDR said that. And FDR was the man responsible for taking a lot of the personal gold away from the American people when he was president in the 1930s and 40s. And also his odd policies in World War II, where he pretty much, what happened, at the end he pretty much, his Vice President Truman pretty much takes all out credit for the winning of the war against Nazis. But FDR didn't even join in on the Western Theater all the way up to 1944, practically. It was D-Day, where the United States was mostly involved in the Pacific. And in the end, FDR also did a lot of war crimes that the Allied forces did, really everybody committed major war crimes. And, of course, the Nazis, the Soviets, the British, the French, it was an ugly war. But what the United States were doing, that's really also what Britain did in Dresden, were some of the most horrific things that were ever witnessed in war. I mean, Dresden was one of the most horrific scenes of war forever when the British bombed Dresden, and the describing of what some of the people saw as they were leaving the city while the bombing was happening is just some of the most horrific words that you ever see written on paper, put together. Talk about the zoo and all the sounds that were being heard in the city. It was something similar almost to like a description of Hiroshima or something like that. All out just calamity of it. Or Nagasaki. I mean, Dresden was almost as bad as those two. It's not been talked about. I mean, 100,000 people were killed, which is about the same amount of people that were killed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, each event. But it was at the end of the war, also just like those two events, when the enemy was near total defeat, but yet, Britain or the United States still did those actions in each respective situation. And but ultimately, also, who constructed the Nazi war machine, going back to, is really the most ugly thing when you look at it, because you realize that the same people that constructed the Nazi war machine are tied in, or have been tied in for a long time, even, with the United States government today. IBM and other major companies were tied in with the Nazis at one point. And these same corporations that lend money, and the same bankers, Strasser brother bankers, and even the Rothschild bankers that gave money to the Nazi war machine are giving money to the U.S. war machine today. And the Nazi war machine also was enabled by one other thing, is that the British, in action in 1938, they had a major opportunity to overthrow Hitler. Could have prevented Hitler from staying in power, but the British didn't pull the trigger. It was called the Oster conspiracy, where a major general in the German military, I think it was like a major general in the German military, Oster. At least he was a general. I don't know what was exactly his rank now. Think about it, but he was high up, I remember. And he organized. You already had the psychologist and do a major legal move against Hitler and declare him insane, leading to his removal from power. And then at that point, somebody else in Germany would take over the power of over the Third Reich. However, all they needed was the British green light to actually do the actions. But the British wouldn't give them security on that and wouldn't give them the green light, and then it didn't happen. So in 1938, the removal of Hitler did not happen, and Hitler stayed in power, which would lead to World War II, major destruction, and the State of Israel being created, which led to more atrocities being committed. Because, like Livingstone said, is that Hitler did cooperate with the Zionists. It was a little bit further than what he said. I would have been way further, more than suspended from the Labour Party if I was in the Labour Party as an MP. I would have been completely banned from the Labour Party. And it's a little bit of a disappointment to see Livingstone and whatever Naz Shah, which I believe part of the reason Naz Shah was originally why she was kicked out of the Labour Party might have been because the fact that she was I believe she's Muslim, I think, right? I don't know, which I think makes her anti-Zionist remarks come off even more intense to the crowd, and they decided that they didn't want somebody in their party talking like that, so they got rid of her. Suspended her, and then they got rid of Livingstone for defending her. And he didn't say anything historically inaccurate or that's not even widely known, and he still got suspended. And the fact that Corbyn and the leaders of the party, Corbyn tries to act like there's people around his party, I guess, that and he even had a speech where he said he won't allow criticism of Israel and he won't allow anti-Semitism and hate, or I guess, in his party, and he won't allow anti-Semitism in his party. which he just went completely on board with the people. That some people are trying to act like, well, it was the people around Corbyn that allowed or made this decision happen. I think Corbyn, he seems to be pretty complicit. Which he looked like he was going to be a major critic of Israel, and that he was going to be a major change for the British people and a major opposition candidate. Unlike Ed Miliband, that was a super Zionist and was very much like the Tories that David Cameron belongs to. But Corbyn seems to have moderated and became more Cameron-like as the months went on, as after he took the power of being the opposition leader in Britain. And now, is he really much of an opposition? I mean, we've seen that what's been considered opposition over the years really degraded. I mean, the fact that at one point, like Tony Blair was considered a socialist, and then later who cooperated with George Bush in the Iraq War and cooperated with all his lies. And then later, after that, Nigel Farage, a racist, and the ultimately kind of called himself a champion of liberty, but in reality was just almost like a neocon, like an equivalent of a Ted Cruz, maybe of a British Ted Cruz, was considered somewhat of an opposition over there for a while, and then now we have Corbyn, which seems to be somewhat of a disappointment of what we thought he was. So, is the fact that we might be, for British politics, we might be looking at George Galloway, and we forgot about him, and that he's been the only one that's stayed firm with what he said. He's always said what he believed. He's been beat up over it, like what happened with a Zionist who beat up Galloway for being against the Zionist action in 2014 and beyond. And now Galloway is supporting what he said. When Galloway doesn't belong to the Labour Party, because he's much more radical than the face of the Labour Party of UK. And in Europe right now, they had a pretty surprising outcome for May Day this year, with quite a bit of people coming out to the streets in different countries. And I think that seems to be a lot of people are fed up. People are fed up with the same lies and the status quo that has existed inside of these different parties, inside of these many different parties that all ended up being the same in Europe. They've had 6-party elections, and every party believes practically the same thing. And let's look at what happened in France and Germany. France are having a major labor protest against the disappointment that Hollande was. Hollande was talked about almost like how Obama was talked about in the United States, and then it ended up being just like his predecessor, Sarkozy. They were like, here, just like Bush. And now he has one of the lowest approval ratings ever of a French leader at 14% only. Only 14% of the people support Hollande. It might have went up after the recent terror attacks and all that. People running behind their leader after, even though that the French government has been responsible for the funding to maybe a smaller degree, but still responsible, then funding terrorists in the Middle East and ISIS in Syria and other regions. Hollande has been a complete disappointment. And it's led to major labor protests. Has led to major calls for his for his removal from power. Well, and much other stuff. And people are very fed up with the status quo there, and people are very fed up with the status quo in Germany and many other countries in the EU. In Germany is the head of the EU and benefits the most from being in the EU because they practically dictate the rules of the EU. Yet Merkel and all those people and all the people that used to support her is shrunk her power. Merkel's lost a lot of support of the German people, and now you have people from both the right wing, far right wing, other people, which I say Merkel really kind of represents far right. I mean, she's what she did in Ukraine by supporting neo-Nazis. And then people of the left wing with the May Day rallies and stuff like that today, there's a lot of people very angry at Merkel. And you even have Trump over here in the United States lashing out at Merkel. I mean, she seems to be really liked by very few. And also her very weak actions. Erdogan, allowing Erdogan to practically dictate German law by saying that Erdogan can go or might be able to go after German citizens that talk bad about Erdogan. And Erdogan being if Turkey's allowed into the EU, it seems that Erdogan's reach might go a little bit further than the borders of the country of the capital, with its capital being Istanbul. It looks like Turkey might be able to move its capital to Berlin, because they seem to be, and also even in, I think Denmark or something, there was a similar case where they said that they might be going after somebody who's made bad remarks about Erdogan in that country. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's Denmark, and that's that's thousands of miles away from Turkey, and yet Erdogan's allowed to dictate laws outside his borders, and it shows the absolute megalomaniac personality of Erdogan, which he's a complete dictator in Turkey, and has been in power longer than Putin, but yet he has the nerve to call Putin a dictator, and he's been there with no opposition. He censors the media, and he enjoys tons of support from the United States, while he is known by everybody to be supporting terrorism and ISIS, directly going from ISIS, coming from the southern border of Turkey into Syria. But yet, and he also religiously does genocide against the minority of Kurds. I mean, he does genocide against the Kurds, against the minority of Kurds, and he also has a religious theocracy practically inside of Turkey. And on top of that, he's also worked with other countries that are doing very similar actions, like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Nothing says that you are democratic than your buddies being some of the most biggest human rights violators, like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. And Turkey continues to be a puzzling why anybody would even. I mean, it's people who can't pick up on that, but there's been a lot of backlash in Europe, and it's good. I see the people have woken up a little bit, and that there's a lot of backlash against that in Europe. They don't want Turkey to be admitted into the EU because, number one, they're not European. And number two is that it's Erdogan trying to reach his power further. And the EU is what it's done is just allowed a couple countries to dominate the laws of a few other countries, such as Italy, and also pass the economic hurt that would go to Germany, for example, to like Italy, Spain, or possibly Portugal. Those three countries took a really big beating during their years in the EU, while Germany and France stayed generally dry. It's not it really is, in a way, something similar to the Soviet Union when it comes to how loose the borders inside are. But
hey, Chris.
Yes.
Hey, let me know when I can jump in here. I've got something from chat. Unfortunately, we do not have phone lines. I know Jules told me that she did forward them, but there might be a mistake there on. She might have sent them to the other me over here. But anyway, sorry about that. We had Michael in chat, had some commentary and shared a link there, and wanted to ask also. Well, I'll come back around that. If I can have a moment, let me go over here to this. It is from the whitehouse.gov. Is it okay to go ahead or would you like to finish your thought there that I interrupted?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thought there.
All right, super. Hey, thanks, Michael. This is our very own Michael from UCY.TV. Primer time Tuesday nights and replays on Fridays. Thank you for Michael, you're a great guy. So many of us have been here for so long. Be 4 years of UCY.TV anniversary come August, I believe 19th. I'm really glad for the participation over here. So this is from whitehouse.gov, the press office. Loyalty Day 2016. And I want you to think and stop and listen to this. And how reminiscent is this of what history, the history is told to us anyways, about Nazi Germany and the rise to, all the insanity that ensued from there. But anyways, this is the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. America endures, well, I can't do it, I'll just read it. America endures because of the generations of our people who have endeavored alongside one another, joining their voices, hey, I'm connecting voices, and their efforts to ensure our nation lives up to its highest levels. Driven by the determination to continue making our society more just and more equal, our work to fulfill our country's potential has always relied on our willingness to see ourselves in our fellow citizens. On the outside, I mean, this really sounds good, but I mean, put aside the languages here, citizen and so forth, as opposed to our natural sovereignty and the opposition of government to that expression. Continuing, our nation, listen to this, this is really gets it. Our nation has always been at its finest when guided by a spirit of shared sacrifice and common purpose, like killing people overseas. It is that spirit that led a small band of patriots to declare our fledgling democracy free from the grasp of tyranny that slaves and abolitionists carried in their hearts as they march forward on the long journey towards freedom, and that guides the men and women who wear our country's uniform in their selfless service. From the unlit paths of the Underground Railroad to the launch of Greensboro, the first streets draped in the colors of pride, to the highest court in our land. We have seen through our history that America is inexorably driven forward by those who commit themselves to expanding our founding promise through extraordinary acts of courage and heroism, like those brave souls out there in Nevada in 2014 and this last the first of the year, end of the year in Oregon, huh? Oh, maybe they don't include those kind of folks that stand against tyranny. We honor that legacy that demonstrates that the forces of hope and love of our country are strong enough to overcome even our most deeply entrenched obstacles. By revolving to carry it forward, by rejecting appeals to prejudice and division in our time, and by drawing on the hopes and dreams that bind us. While ours has been a large and complicated democracy full of differing views and boisterous debates, our history also makes clear that we are strong when we find in our diversity a deeper, richer unity. That sure goes back into respect and the idea of the privilege in with Dr. George Simon was talking about earlier. It very much applies.
I saw that quote you put up about the stuff that used to be saw as privileges and not seen as rights.
Yes.
It goes back to what I've seen recently, which it really just puts a little bit less faith in this new generation when you see stuff like the safe spaces and stuff like that they believe that they have a right not to hear opposing opinions, which is some of the silliest shit I've ever heard. I mean, it's like, when I see on Facebook just absolutely sometimes horrid shit of what, people have to say. I mean, stuff that's just either outright stupid, completely hateful, and stuff like that. And these people can't handle a few words. I mean, apparently it was a big deal when people wrote Trump 2016 on sidewalk or something like that, which I don't support Trump 2016, but I don't think they should be so offended that you consider yourself to be triggered when you see something that says Trump 2016.
Oh my God!
What I don't like is at the same time I want to go on the opposite end of this and give what's been blowing up in me is that InfoWars tries to act like they're not different on different aspects. Because once you bring up the Zionists and many callers have done it so many times over the years on InfoWars, Alex Jones goes into a hissy fit and freaks out or starts talking about how starts calling you a Nazi and stuff like that. It reminds me of what happened when Payday Monsanto called into Alex Jones and he freaked out and got real pissed off and didn't even let him talk.
Wow. Hey, let me read this quote from George Simon. I'll hand you back the mic. We got a lot of response from that there share on Facebook. Dr. Simon says, and this, by the way, is the prelude to the second commandment, manipulativepeople.com, humble gratitude. So Dr. Simon says, we live in an age of unprecedented entitlement. Almost everything once regarded as a privilege or something to be earned is now regarded as an inherent right. As a result, many people have come to expect far more than they feel obliged to give. This, he says, which has had a disastrous precedent for the character formation of our children. Very true. Going back 2 weeks ago to my phone call to Dr. Simon, and it started some debate there in comments in the UCY.TV user. So 2 weeks ago, Dr. Simon. And I find I have to agree and disagree at the same time with Dr. Simon. So if you'll go over and give a listen to the last, I think 20 minutes there of that show and check the comments. So yeah, come on along, and I'm going to hand you back the mic. And thanks to Mike for that link there from the presidential proclamation. And that does sound so much like what we perceived the rise of Nazi Germany. So thanks, Chris. Let me hand you back to Mike. And he may have stepped out for a moment, I guess, while I was blabbing. So until he gets back, let me continue over here back to the this presidential proclamation. While ours has always been a large and complicated, I already read that one. In order to recognize the American spirit of loyalty and their sacrifices that so many have made for our nation, the Congress, by Public Law 85-529 as amended, has designated May 1st of each year as Loyalty Day. Wow. On this day, let us reaffirm our allegiances to the United States of America and the corporations for which it stands, and pay tribute to the heritage of our American freedom in the means of by means of theft by taxation, hidden taxes, and all that good stuff. Now, therefore, I, Barack Obama, President here of the United States. Okay, Chris, 1 second. I'll finish this out. Do you hereby proclaim May 1st, 2016 is Loyalty Day. It's Loyalty Day. I call upon all the people of the United States to join in support of this national observance, whether by displaying the flag of the United States or the Gaston flag or the flag upside down, pledging allegiance to these held republic for which it stands in witness whereof I unto here have set my hand this 26th day of April in the year of our Lord 2016 and of the interdependence, the dependence of the United. We are independents, aren't we? Independent. We have dependence on this government. Thanks, Hal. I bobbled your word for you. Hal Anthony earlier today spoke very well about this. Check out his past cast, by the way. Hal Anthony behind the woodshed. Goes up to playlist over at UCY. Thursday this week will be there. In the meantime, reallibertymedia.com behind the woodshed. Thanks, Hal. Great work you do. All right, Chris, back to you, brother.
Yeah, nice words. We're able to get out there, and you brought up again about the Bundy and all that stuff, and about the Nevada ranch that happened a couple years ago. Can you believe that? It's been a little over 2 years now since that original incident happened in the April 2014, and it was kind of, I mean, now that's our own domestic thing. Some of it rising up, but it still seems to be very small compared to what's happening, for example, in France right now. Major protests, in Germany, major protests there too. I mean, they're talking about millions of people are out in the streets and stuff because they're so fed up right now with their EU governments. And today on May Day, there was clashes between riot police and the protesters in Germany because and the police probably went, are not going to hold back too much restraining because they're worried because the Merkel regime is on thin ice at this point, and Merkel has been. At this point, there's not there's not much you can fall back on. She's not very charismatic. She's not very, let's face it, she's very homely looking, I would say, to say the least. It's really, she's also, and she's not very well liked at this point. It's probably the funny thing in the end is that probably Merkel's going to try to, when she realizes that the United States can't do anything to save her, she's probably going to go either trying to go to Putin or something like that. But I think she had a chance, and she didn't take it, and now she's thinking of letting the United States deal with her and realizing the United States won't do anything to save her, or can't do anything to save her, and that the protesters will eventually win over there. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Hollande. He's going to lose the election in 2017, unless it's rigged for whoever him, but it probably won't be him, will be a successor. It's funny also who the United States brings out to Europe and stuff like that, the joke of protesters. They just really do. They almost degrade the whole thing when famine shows up and the protest. For example, they're protesting. They're protesting, which is not the best of parties, but National Front, which National Front does go against the French line on foreign policy, and they are generally pro-Putin, and so every time there's anything pro-Putin, and Femin's there to try to shut it down, which it's these, a feminist movement. Every man's oppressing it, women, that kind of line of thinking that they belong to, and they protest by showing up with no shirts, and they always do the same thing. And it's not. I mean, you think that would be a good thing, but a lot of times these women are not very much of a thing to look at. So what's more to look at is just their complete hate that seems to be in them, because they talk about misogyny. These people they're in misandry. They definitely hate men. And I think they're definitely tools that are brought in by the Western governments in the United States whenever it's necessary. It reminds me of the Pussy Riot when it happened with them. Is that they eventually were meeting up at the White House and stuff like that after they act like they were totally innocent throughout the whole ordeal in Russia. If I remember correctly, is that they were around with people vandalizing shit in churches and stuff like that. And you would get a similar, probably maybe a stiffer penalty in the United States, a worse penalty in the United States if you're doing stuff like that, damaging private property, depending on the private property they belong to. And put down a pretty fair penalty, 2 years. I don't even know if they served it. And eventually they go to the United States in the end. And it wasn't even Putin, it was just some judge. It wasn't Putin didn't personally hand down the order. It's like they try to make it seem like it's still like the old days. The Politburo picks the leader of the country, and the leader makes decisions of stuff that doesn't even really relate to them. Like they'll make a decision on a foreigner who got arrested in their country. Days like that of the Soviet Union are way in the rearview mirror in Russia. And yes, they brought some traditions over, and they've been just brought, and now it just became Russian traditions like May Day, and perhaps also Victory Day, but Victory Day was a Russian victory over Nazi Germany and fascism in Europe, which they are 90% responsible for that happening. And the Russians did it despite the fact that their government, Stalin, wasn't really helping them that much when it came to the fact that Stalin's strategy was messed up, and Stalin originally had signed a peace deal with the Nazis. So despite all that, the Russian people overcame a lot of adversity to win that war, and the fact that their technology was years behind the German technology that they possessed when the Germans had a pretty big fleet of helicopters, which were brand new at the time. They had pretty well advanced guns. I mean, the gun that they used during World War II was, I believe, Germans. A lot of them they had like a submachine gun, the MP40, I believe, was what they used in World War II. Well, the Russians were still using Tommy guns, like stuff like the mobsters used to use. I mean, that works when you're taking over the streets of Chicago, but it doesn't really not that practical when you're talking about fighting and world warfare. And the Soviets were very I mean, the Soviet army was very under-equipped for the whole thing. They had their top commanders. Well, I mean, Stalin himself was trying to command the military, and he was failing by just pretty much sending men at the problem, hoping that would fix itself. And in the end, it just came down to like low-level, non-commissioned officers and stuff like that dictating the strategy, and that actually would lead to the victory of the war, and really just the might of the enlisted people of the Soviet military in defending the motherland from total destruction, which what the Nazis were doing in Leningrad and in Moscow, especially Leningrad, was some of the biggest, was one of the worst sieges on history in a city. Like 1 million people died when Leningrad was being sieged. And that's right, the Nazis got all the way over there. This is where modern-day St. Petersburg, Russia, that's what Leningrad is today. And they were right outside of Moscow at one point. And yet they were able to turn away that giant wave of soldiers and push them all the way back to Berlin eventually. It was a very ugly end, though. A lot of Soviet enlisted soldiers did a lot of war crimes towards the end. A lot of horrible things happened to the German people, and the World War ended up being bad for everybody and every country that was involved. The bankers made a lot of profit off the Nazi experiment, and ultimately the torch got passed on to the United States. As many of those Nazis that were very much that should have been executed or put in prison for life ended up becoming United States government personnel and becoming very high levels even in the United States government, like Adolf Husinger, who got his old job as chief of staff in Nazi Germany at NATO, as the NATO chief of staff. So he became one of the most powerful men in the world at the end of it. And even a guy with literally his first name was Adolf. But it was Husinger, not Adolf Hitler, who supposedly died 71 years ago today. But again, there's all that evidence that shows that he might have got away, that he did get away. And which also on May Day was when that went down. But it's said that he probably might have gotten away a few days before his supposed death on May 1st, and might have got away about April 20th or something. He got on a plane while the city was being taken over and went to Spain, and then there's this evidence that he went on a submarine or something down to the Canary Islands, and then maybe down to somewhere in the Caribbean. I guess if they believe that he might have ended up somewhere in Colombia or in Argentina or Colombia in the end. Who knows? But the Nazis, many of them lived regular lives at the end, actually extraordinary lives, as it should be said, because they lived in a lot of opulence and luxury. But at the end of their high-level positions in whatever country, like Klaus Barbie or Adolf Husinger, or the person that was the head of the rocket program in the United States, or Joseph Mengele. May not all of them have luxurious positions, but they had a lot of money to bring over there to keep that luxury that they had before in Nazi Germany and live the same way. I mean, and then they died of stuff that was even related to anything like that of the war. I mean, like Mengele drowned outside of his vacation home in Brazil. That's where he ran to. And I was talking about in Brazil. I was talking about Brazil, and what happened there is that they had a fascist dictatorship for many years, and they also harbored Nazis like Joseph Mengele. And the Brazilian fascist dictatorship left a lot of lingering elements and a lot of reminders that existed by some of the problems that are faced by Brazil today, because it came all the way up to really the 80s before it ended. And also, there's the sanctions, plus the lingering effects of the fascist dictatorship that's making a lot of problems for Brazil today. And you see now that the people of Brazil are upset and so a lot of them are protesting, but a lot of them realize the situation, have accurately assessed it, and are in favor of Dilma because they realize that the United States solution, and they already have a guy lined up, and he's talked. He was going to say immediately what he was going to do is he's going to make a better relationship with the bankers of the West and with the United States government. Similar was like what Macri done in Argentina when he became the leader, or what happened with Fernando Lugo in Paraguay was replaced with Horacio Cortez. And now you can see that they're trying to reverse a lot of the Bolivian revolution in South America with something of a return of the tide of the 70s and Operation Condor. And now this trying to end this era of change and sovereignty for South America and replace it with an era of dependence and regression to a primitive style of leadership where people are kidnapped in black vans at night and where it's normal for people to be disappeared for political reasons and stuff like that. There are many of these countries no political prisoners, or or very few. And for example, Venezuela, many of these people that are in prison for reasons that are, these people are very violent and are terrorists and actually had burnt their buses and stuff like that and had shot people or ordered that kind of stuff. That's why Leopoldo Lopez is in there for 13 years. And he didn't do any of the stuff directly, but that doesn't mean you're completely innocent. He ordered it, and he didn't even get life. I mean, let's put it in perspective. We have a man in prison that's been in prison for, and this will sound like a weird description or a weird comparison, but just think about it. That there's a man that ordered, via his cult, the murders of a few Hollywood celebrities back in the 60s, Charles Manson, and he didn't actually kill anybody directly with his own two hands, but yet he's in prison for life, and it goes to the same concept. It's just because you didn't physically actually pull the trigger doesn't mean that you didn't murder the guy, because you ordered it. And yeah, it's true, well, they weren't brainwashed or a cult, but isn't the politics of fascism somewhat of a cult itself? And it's not an exaggeration to believe that some of these people are swastika carrying, Sieg hailing Nazis. They do exist in Venezuela, from what I've seen before, and they might not be the majority of the people in the Leopoldo Lopez crowd, but they definitely influence a lot of it. What it's about and the roots of it are very fascist, and are about hate and about killing. And yes, I can tell you that a lot of people in the Leopoldo Lopez crowd would not be very fond, probably, of living with black people in their neighborhood and stuff like that, which the Chavistas have had no problem with. Let's not forget is that before that, also, we would go back to like a Colombian scenario, probably, where in Colombia there's still legal segregation, similar to the Jim Crow days, where black people live on one part of the town, and white people live on the other part of town. And it's funny. People still have that mentality. Like, it reminds me of maybe some old Southern mentality, maybe from the 50s or something like that. It's like, oh, we're not racist. We just don't live with those colored folk. You know, it's kind of like that seems to be the mentality in Colombia, is that they'll even say stuff like that. We're not racist. But, yeah, they don't live with them. And they probably would have a problem if they lived with them in the same neighborhood, and definitely would have a problem with it if their kids started hanging out with black folk or started dating a black person. Reminds me of what Americans have that. Well, Americans have the mentality, don't they? I mean, probably over 50% of them might have that mentality, where is that if their daughter brings home a black man, all of a sudden their politically correct black loving ass all of a sudden turns into Klansmen, practically. Their mentality completely shifts because they really have some roots of racism in this country. And people go back to, or that I supported Obama or whatever, that old argument. Obama ended up becoming one of the worst things for black people in the United States because he ultimately disappointed them heavily and continued many of the Clinton-era policies, Bush-era policies, when it comes to crime and stuff like that, and just the establishment. He tricked them into support an establishment politician that continued to support the same things that led to many African Americans and just people in general being falsely in prison, where we have a bigger prison population than Russia and China combined. I would say it's like Russia, China, India combined. And we have 25% of the world's prison population, yet we have only 5% of the world's people. It's really it's really a shame, and that's the prison population. That's the prison industrial complex that exists in this country. We don't. It seems like the people of this country are a little bit afraid to do real revolutionary moves. Like, for example, why can't we have like what the French did in the late 1700s when they stormed the Bastille and released the people out of the debtors' prison? How about if we did that with private prisons in America? We put fucking 200,000 people outside of a private prison, and we have armed protesters or whatever, and we just fucking storm the place. I mean, and we don't aim guns at anybody, but we have them at our hip ready, and what? The guards are going to either have to shoot us, or they're going to shoot thousands of people, causing one of the biggest outlashes in history when it comes to be similar to like the Boston Massacre would be for this revolution that'd be coming up, or they have to just accept whatever we do. So we could, we could do whatever practically once we're in there if we have that many people. We could demand that every nonviolent drug offender is allowed to walk right out that door at that moment, and we could have the warden at our disposal at that point. We could get all the information and all their cronies that they've been working with, and find out that we could get all their declassified documents, all their classified documents off their computers. I mean, it sounds it sounds like the thoughts of a dreamer, but I think this kind of stuff would be necessary. And it would be, this would be the early start to a revolution, because that's how it went down in France. And I think that's not an outdated idea. Storming of illegitimate prisons, and I think it's eventually those people are going to be released out of the illegitimate prisons. So how about we make that one of the earliest things that happens? Is or even now that there's this talk that they'll soon be there's these talks that debtors' prisons are going to make a comeback. If that happens, we better be ready to do something like that. If they bring back that ancient barbaric, practice from the fucking 1700s back in the United States, we're not going to allow it. And we, the people, have an armed protest at one of these things. I say an armed protest because it leaves them in a predicament. I don't think they're going to shoot on them, shoot on people that are not pointing their guns at them. But at the same time, they won't shoot anybody because they have people with guns in the crowd. For example, if they walked in 200,000 was not a single person carrying a gun, I don't know, they might shoot 4 or something like that and cause everybody to run away, or do whatever, or start just arresting people on the spot, and it might take 1,000 people. But still, I think it was that kind of numbers. They can't arrest or kill everybody. And so the possibilities are endless in a situation like that. Of course, I feel like when I say stuff like this, there might be a disconnect with some people, and definitely with some of the non-awake people. They probably think this is absolutely crazy. But we gotta get a little bit weird, a little bit crazy, in order for, we can't go with completely the marches forever. We can't march in the street for 50 years. Look what the civil rights people, the people in the continuation of the civil rights movement for African Americans. I mean, there's some stuff that they've been asking for 50 years, and they rightfully should ask, and they haven't gone anywhere. Or other activists over the years, they've been marching for many, many years, and they don't get anywhere. It's like we can't march in the streets forever. This Million Mass March and stuff like that is great, but we need something real. We need to show that it still looks like we're scared when we do stuff like that, and that we even get permits for our protests and stuff like that. we need to do something that shows that we are no longer abiding by their laws, and that their law system will soon be very archaic when they're out of power.
Yeah, you know what? The time for marching is gone. Like Al was talking about on his broadcast today, with the social engineering and the crowd control, all this stuff they got going on. When I was in Bunkerville in 2014, you could see these people moving in. They disrupted the whole business. Beverly, I don't know if you're listening, but yeah, I forward that information, and you said you did forward to Mrs. Bundy. I appreciate that. Listen, as Hal tells us, it's time to take it and bring this war to them and hold these individuals accountable. There has to be so many loopholes for them to get away with all this, that we can take and use those against them and turn it back on them. When people are committing a crime, we need to hold them accountable. Listen, check out the JeffersonMiningDistrict.com. There is a lot of good information right there. Hal Anthony behind the woodshed, and every Sunday right here on UCY.TV from RealLibertyMedia.com. Thanks everybody over there at Real Liberty Media right now listening as well. We have the redirect from there over to UCY.TV for those folks to come over and join the chat if you'd like. At least I know y'all are listening. Hal, I really appreciate everything that you do. And Chris, I would suggest that you sharpen your pencil and sit up straight and come along and join the broadcast every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central, right here where you're listening at right now. You'll find a lot of great words of wisdom there. He's been very helpful, giving us suggestions as well about improving our audio. Great man. I find myself, I visualize myself as sitting at his feet while he speaks, and I think my language is starting to reflect more of my understanding. He was very instrumental in really bringing about a change of viewpoint for me, or at least honing it. I mean, we were looking in the same direction, and so he gives us a position that we might take to approach these injustices, and it's very important that we address this all properly, because when we find out that we're not addressing it properly, you see what happens with people of the press being held without bail in Oregon. Just like we read in this presidential declaration of Loyalty Day. Who are we loyal to? This government is exactly opposite of what it is.
Well, I find it funny. Isn't that funny that they do it on May 1st? To make this Loyalty Day. I mean, it's a made-up holiday in order to counter. May Day's been about around the world, and that this year it seems to be a little bit. This year's been one of the most powerful May Days in a long time. I mean, even in New York, they had a rally of over 2,000 people yesterday, which wasn't even May Day. And the same over there in Germany, major rallies and France protests are surrounding it with the labor protests that have been going on for weeks, and then. All around the world, I think this year there's a lot of revolutionary energies definitely going around. It seems to be the case, isn't it? In Latin America, in Cuba, there's been major rallies. I know it's a little bit different down there, especially in Cuba. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that it's celebrated a little bit differently in the communist countries. It's kind of like but there they're like celebrating the progress they've made after the revolution, and I guess this year is probably a little bit bigger deal because it might be the last one was Fidel still alive. A few weeks ago, I think he announced that he was he said he kind of alluded along the way. It could be taken different ways what he said. There's a possibility that he might be not in the best of health, and that he might be not around for too much longer. I mean, he is turning 90 in August, and we're looking at we definitely know what we're doing next time we have a major event like the Bundy protest there in Oregon, and because look how it ended up. It didn't end up very well when it comes down to that. We had people going to jail without bail and stuff like that. And we got an infiltrator. I don't care what you say, but Pete Santilli is not. I mean, he got caught red-handed with emails. From what I saw, they got leaked between him and the FBI. And if you look what his website does, his website completely discredits truthers because before it's news, has been always putting absurd articles about like flying eels and stuff like that. It's like an internet version of what's that? Coast to Coast, which is done now. They don't even air that anymore. And Coast to Coast wasn't even really for I don't think supposed to be completely factual, or he never even claimed it to be. He more claimed it to be like a discussion of stuff that he heard going around, but he didn't. I don't think he necessarily. Art Bell took everything that he said, wanted everybody to take everything that he said as literal truth. But yeah, it seems like in a way that doesn't seem much different than the Art Bell broadcast of what Santilli's before it's news, in my opinion, has done over the years. And I mean, I see a lot. I mean, he seems to be one of the most disliked members in the truth community, maybe for a reason. I mean, it's not even like, for example, David Icke. That also puts some pretty absurd stuff that has very little likelihood of being true, in my opinion. But David Icke might not be. I think David Icke just went a little bit off the rails there in the 90s. I mean, if you look at the history of what happened in his media, the media treated him horribly, but you could see that he slowly got a little bit more weirder, and then I think that after that he might have just I think he kind of moderated. I think now he's. I think it might be a short time where he might have been a little bit not there, if you know what I'm saying. Now he seems to be a little bit more there. He seems to be a little bit more thinking more along factual lines. But back in the 90s, he went all. I mean, I believe David, didn't he claim to be the son of Jesus at one point? I mean, you got to be pretty nutty, to say something like that, and with no real evidence about it. They also did the whole thing with the green turtlenecks and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not here to diss other people of Truth Movement, but I'm just stating the facts. And Santilli, it wasn't himself. It's what the articles that were on his website made either him or really made the whole Truth Movement look nutty, because a lot of people know that's one of the biggest. It is one. I mean, it's a lot of people see it because it's one of the biggest truther websites on the internet. It makes us look like a bunch of we're all getting tinfoil hats and hunkering down in our basements. And that shouldn't be how we're perceived. We should be received as regular people, with some revolutionary energy, trying to awaken people and trying to tell people what's going on. We're here to spread info. And also, in alternative media, a little bit different than regular media. I mean, this is just regular people putting their voice out here, and that's what's so great about being on a channel like UCY or something like that, being on the alternative media. We got about 23 minutes left of the show. Mayday, I've actually, over the years, I think, I don't know when I found out about it exactly. I think 2013 is the first one I was aware that was Mayday, and yeah, it didn't seem like those first three that I was aware of were as big as this one has been. 2016 Mayday, it's been a pretty hectic one around the world. A lot of stuff went down. We had stuff even in here inside the United States happening. And we had some pretty big protests surrounding. I mean, we also had, look what happened just a few days ago out there in L.A., where, we had somebody from my very own station that I used to work at before UCY, Stable Radio Lieutenant, was out there in California, out there in Mesa, California, where Trump was forced to, by the roads being blocked, he was forced to walk in via a fence. Or he had to climb over a fence to actually get in. He had a very hard time actually getting to his rally, and it was actually a major disruption. Of course, a lot of people are saying this is not spontaneous. This is a constructed mob or something like that. But I think that a lot of people were there as legitimate protests. I wish that there was legitimate protests like this that Clinton, Cruz, and even Bernie Sanders over the same purpose. Bernie, even, you know, a lot of these people probably, unfortunately, would be attending a Bernie rally in support of Bernie Sanders, who, let's not forget that when it comes to people that are supportive of, for example, Putin and supportive of or against the European Union or something like that, is that Sanders has been pretty hardcore against Putin since the start of the Crimea situation. And also, what he did to Europe, or what he helped facilitate in doing to Europe, was the bombing by NATO of Yugoslavia in 1999 was absolutely terrible. And Sanders has been in favor of the alienation, or really anyone that's not truly in the West, you know, in what politically West world. I mean, still supportive of people like really the European style socialism, kind of what he supports. I mean, which is not really socialism, just a little bit more humane version of our own economic system. You know, he said he supported Scandinavian, which style of that, which the Scandinavian countries seem to be quite anti-Putin at times. So he's definitely no friend of Putin, and he's definitely on Assad when he's talked about Assad calling him a dictator who gasses people. And he calls Iran a terrorist state, one of the three countries that actually fights terrorism in the Middle East. Apparently, well, yeah, I'd say now it's one of the four. It's not Yemen, but they're fighting terrorism. They only can fight terrorism in their own country because they're in the midst of a civil war with terrorism. Iran is actually the biggest fighter of terrorism.
Pull your head back up, buddy.
Huh?
There you go. There you go. I thought you might have been looking inside that bucket.
No.
Hey, about Santilli, we're getting some discussion here in chat. So a lot of people some are speculating that he overstepped his deal with the quotations there with the FBI. My assumption is that maybe he just thought he could endear himself as being a snitch with the FBI. I don't know that. You know, I remember seeing some stuff where some people hacked his account. I don't know how reliable that is, but I do know when I first locked eyes on him, I'm scanning the crowd and I'm looking for a troublemaker, and I lock eyes on him, and he just looked to me like he's up to no good. But I think, personally, my opinion is it's his personality. He has a desire. I think he's a narcissist. It turns out I'm not, and I was a little disappointed to find that out. But you know, in so many ways, people that gravitate towards this are, you know, they're part of the problem. The sensationalism and all that goes with it, the division. Trying to what's the point in trying to argue with anybody, debate them, or trying to convince them of anything? It needs cool, comfortable persuasion, and without proper communication, we're not going to ever hope to persuade anyone of anything other than what it is they already hold dear. We're all affected by our bias, by our perception, our investment in that of whom we are, whether it be professionalism and, you know, scholars and religion. There's often no room for any other information besides what one already holds dear in their heart. So there is so much information to sift through, and thankfully UCY.TV right here, Jules has compiled, I think, again, what I told Hal over Real Liberty Media chat, he too, in this book that I'm writing in my head, the archived events of the end of the world, the alternative ending is that we overcome, and so if we don't, this history will be deleted. And Jules has compiled the greatest archives of the best and most important information that is available anywhere. And it's all right here in one place. And there's so many other great people, of course, working elsewhere. lots of good influences that I find for bettering my perception. To step outside my own perception and take a look from somebody else's view, and I think that's what we really all need to try to maybe do, to step out of ourselves and take a look from somebody else's point of view. And again, I refer back to Dr. Simon's broadcast today, manipulativepeople.com, -people.com. Check out that website and catch up there, and be sure to stick around. Let me go ahead and get this out here for y'all. And I'll have to click this tab back here to read it. I'm going to give Nathan Frazier an introduction. Following up here in about 15 minutes, Nathan Frazier, an entrepreneur, anarchist, graphic designer, and copywriter, podcaster, and lover of big booties. He is a managing member at Podcast Blastoffs and lives in broadcasts here every Sunday night, Live Free FM, and entrepreneur podcast. So stick around for Nathan Frazier, another great voice, discussing very, very important topics. And look, I'm not in commerce. I don't do anything I do for any type of compensation, but it is important for those people that are liberty-minded that they succeed in life. So I'd like to ask everybody to support Nathan in his endeavor as an entrepreneur or anarchopreneur. Thank you. And yeah, stick around, keep coming back. It only works if you work it. And I'm not AA. That's non-anonymous. Anonymous. Yeah, okay, Chris,
Yeah,
I'll get back to you.
Well, I wanted to say is, with Nathan Frazier, I guess two things we can agree on is the power of the podcast, and I guess we can agree also on the fact that we like big booties. So, yeah, I guess we could find some common ground and with the people on the radio shows and that I also do here. And I would say also, well, one thing I like to remind people is that we do have a UCY store right there, connected with Amazon, and we got stuff on there that you can buy, and which doesn't go to any profits. It just goes to Jules helping maintain this station. So I suggest that people, if you want to put an investment somewhere, do that, and you're looking to donate somewhere. And another thing, another cause that I guess been looking to donate. If you're looking to donate this, also I saw that they've been there's one thing that's been blacked out in the media has been that the whole revolution in Ukraine, the whole rising up of the East Ukrainians against the fascists in Ukraine that wish to eliminate the Russian language and the Russian people from Ukraine. These Poroshenko and his cronies there wish to do that. And the thing is that the East Ukrainians don't have really any support, unlike the West Ukrainians have support from Israel and the United States. East Ukrainians only have support from some support from Russia, but still not enough for the handle the complete calamity that's happened as this war continues despite a supposed state of ceasefire. This war continues, just like in Syria. There's a supposed state of ceasefire, but their war continues. And the East Ukrainians are in need of donations. So in the humanitarian battalion, there's a few of them that they're not involved in any combat or anything like that. They're just there to give food and stuff like that to the people that are in Ukraine. It's causing a lot of Ukrainian refugees, and that's the funny thing is that during this whole refugee scenario, you don't see any talk from the European Union about that. There's all these plenty of European refugees. They're from a European country that are being really they're in need of a new country to move to. But you hear a lot about refugees from other parts, and from a lot of times you see these refugees, and I believe it is that probably they're a lot of them are disguising as they're from war-torn countries, but they're not. And I think that's not right. While they continue to support a war that's causing refugees, European refugees, inside of Europe right now in East Ukraine, and right now, again, the humanitarian battalions do need some money in order to continue to do the best they can to handle the situation. Of course, there's the combat battalions and stuff of the Novorossiya forces who are fighting diligently and many different foreign volunteers and stuff. I mean, these people, it's not like the West Ukrainian military that are paid soldiers. A lot of people don't even get paid. They're volunteers purely. Some of them get paid, but for the most part, there's even an American volunteer even on the East Ukrainian forces, one that's known of. And there's one on both sides, or was one on both sides, I believe. One I believe was killed. I believe was the only one. He was killed on the West Ukrainian side, and there's still one alive on the East Ukrainian side. So there's actually Americans involved in this war, directly fighting. Of course, there's all kinds of assistance coming from U.S. paratroopers and stuff like that. Like they're training the West Ukrainian forces, East Ukrainian forces. All the only thing they really get is some humanitarian support from Russia. No combat support. The Crimea is secured by Russia since 2014, but to be clear, they're not in Lugansk, Donetsk, or anything like that in the East Ukrainian combat section, and they are completely on their own practically when it comes to actual combat. And another thing I wanted to give a shout out to, another good source for some information. And I mean, I want to talk about a lot of information in one place. The owner of this, like the founder of this network of information, or I guess on Facebook, Global Public. It was Global Public Alert. Is the name of the Facebook page, and they have quite a bit of good stuff. I mean, their graphics are a little bit wacky. But I think they do create all their own graphics. That's a little bit different, and there's just a ton of information. You go to their website, and there's there's like practically, it's like an encyclopedia of information from A to Z, all kinds of stuff. I don't think it's in alphabetical order, but they got some stuff from Hugo Chavez to North Korea. You can look up stuff and plenty of information, and stuff. You get more than the Wikipedia article because they actually get you get the truth about many of these topics, and they only have 25,000 likes on Facebook, which is kind of surprising. But it's because I remember when they were still like promoting themselves. They were hanging around they were hanging around some groups on Facebook, and I kind of ended up in becoming one of their biggest supporters, and kind of like in the inner circle of them, and they're and it became kind of close, communicated quite often with the owner or the founder of Global Public Alert. Well, slightly often. But as we get near the end of the show, I wanted to just say a little thing to the younger generation, that May Day. This is a time that you take a little bit of inspiration, read some revolutionary. Sunday night, I know people really don't want to do anything, especially people that have school tomorrow. They don't really want to do something educational right before they're going to sleep. I mean, right now is actually most of them are on their way to sleep, and now I'm not even on that kind of schedule anymore. I have a hard time crashing before 1:30 and stuff like that, 1 o'clock. I ended up on the second shift schedule, but there's nothing. I gotta say, there's not really much better ways to fall asleep than here's a good slogan. You can take this as a quote by Chris J, a very insightful quote. It's great to fall asleep next to either a great book or a great booty, but why not fall asleep to both in a girl that enjoys the book?
I knew he was gonna say that.
That's a goal right there. Have a nice revolutionary chick on my side. Have I don't know what kind of book I'm reading, Gaddafi's Green Book or something like that. Actually, a paperback copy. I mean, I could see why people like that's bad for you. Don't read your smartphone before going to bed because you'll never go to sleep. I'll tell you that. Okay? It's a bad habit to get into. No, you just read it on a paperback. There's something calming about having an actual physical book in your hands, and then you fall asleep. So it's way better than what a lot of people do, fall asleep. And I think it has a better effect than even like sleeping pills or something like that. Well, you could end up sleepwalking the entire night. Sleep reading, that sounds interesting. I mean, I'm pretty sure people do end up doing that. That'd be me if I end up doing sleep anything. I'd probably get on my smartphone or something and be like, I need to check RT. Need to go to freethoughtproject.com. You just see me typing in some random like gibberish into the browser. They asked me, what are you trying to do? Oh, Free Thought Project. I need the scoop on this thing about Libya. And I'd be asleep the entire time. But yes, that quote, write that down. That's important. you can remember that quote years from now, and definitely to the young people, is that you got some knowledge right there. But you also, the young people, you got a very great tool, the internet, that people not long ago didn't have, and this information box that we call a computer, that we're able to find stuff from all around the world, articles on the internet, and media sources, and think before it's illegal. And when it comes to the internet, really use it before it's illegal, because it's a wonder how it's not illegal already. I mean, I swear they already do censor to some extent, because I see stuff that used to be easy to find is harder to find nowadays. But there's still plenty of international stuff translated to English, and you can get different opinions from around the world. And also check out that Global Public Alert website. I mean, I say it's almost like a Truth Wikipedia right there. It's like it's a smaller version, but it's better than any there are Truth Wikipedias out there. But it seems like, for example, like Metapedia is a complete sham. I went on there, it ended up just becoming like a neo-Nazi website, practically. That said racism is okay, and it said stuff that is completely not true. Like JFK was pro-Hitler, which, if you look, that actually he was very anti-fascist, because the fact that his brother fought in war, or I say his brother died in World War II, and that he fought in World War II. So it's just that they put completely unfactual stuff there. But yeah, Global Public Alert is like a Truth Wikipedia. Go to also Fort Roos, ran by Joaquin Flores and Christina Karlova. Pretty good website when it comes to European stuff, getting European news. It's based out of Serbia, I think. So, well, actually, no, I think Christina Karlova runs it, which she's from Russia originally, but now lives in Massachusetts. We're wrapping up the show here in the last couple minutes here, so thanks everybody for tuning in to UCY Radio tonight. We will be back on May 8th, 2016. Where we're going to be having...
Yeah, hey, tomorrow is my 3-year anniversary here at UCY, and hey, meet me in chat over here. I've got some prizes. I'm going to share my first broadcast. I'm going to replay that over to Real Liberty Media. So you guys come on along. I'll meet you here at UCY.tv. I got some prizes to share for the loyal listeners at UCY.tv and those other ones as well. So thanks a lot. Nathan Frazier, he's next. Stick around. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Vince, as always, for producing the show. Good wingman to have on here, and at least good enough to laugh at my little quote I made there. And we got about 30 seconds left. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Subscribe to me on Facebook, Chris Jackson Rojas. Snapchat, Chris Chavista. I guess I could do this whole Snapchat and everything. Tell that on here. But not really political on there. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a good night, and Yeah, definitely.
Running no return and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds him. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I back